I think these suspects, right, if they're found guilty, the whole book should be thrown at them. This is a very heinous...
Death penalty?
Sure. Right, and it's a very heinous crime. But I think that we also, too, in this country, we believe in nuance and bright lines. And I think there's a clear bright line between these two individuals that you're watching on your screen and an infant that crosses the border with their mother, who, yes, according to the law that Judge Jeanine mentioned, would be considered an illegal alien. But they did not make the choice to cross. They crossed with their family, and now all they want to do is assimilate.
We're not talking about dreamers. We're talking about illegals.
No, but yes,
we're
but they...
not talking about dreamers
hold on,
today. We're talking about violent crime.
I did not interrupt you.
When Richard Fowler tried to illustrate how fear-based politics leads to blanket legislation about our immigration system that also punishes very innocent and very nonviolent children and adults, Jeanine Pirro didn't want to have to address it.
According to the law that you quoted, an infant that crosses the border would be deemed an illegal alien. Yes, they would. It doesn't have an age. It does not have an age differential there.
That's not in this statute.
It does not have an age differential.
Then
Does it have an age
don't talk about
differential? It doesn't.
something you don't
Exactly.
know. You're pivoting.
I'm not pivoting. I'm telling you exactly what's on that paper you just read. So, like I was saying, I could clearly see there's not an age differential on there. So, like I was saying, if we want to have a conversation about how we fix this problem, one, those guys should be behind bars. Maybe the death penalty if the DA makes that decision. But we also need to be courageous as a country, whether you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, to say what that DA said at the beginning of this segment. Our immigration system is broken, and Democrats can't fix it alone, and neither can Republicans.
Passing effective laws regarding our immigration system is already complicated. Too complicated for the majority of us that don't work in that field. So when politicians push scare tactics to get voters on their side based on how afraid they should be, the solutions end up being emotional rather than effective. We stop talking about solving issues and go to dehumanizing enemies that we've never stopped to analyze why they've decided to migrate here.
Dana White, did anyone ever hear of Dana White? He's a legend, right? UFC, ultimate fighter, ultimate fighting, and he's a fantastic man. I said, Dana, I have an idea. Why don't you set up a migrant league of fighters and have your regular league of fighters, and then you have the champion of your league. These are the greatest fighters in the world. Fight the champion of the migrants. I think the migrant guy might win. That's how tough they are. He didn't like that idea too much, but actually it's not the worst idea I've ever had. No, it's these are tough people. These people are tough, and they're nasty, mean.
So if you're the type of person that chuckles while imagining turning humans into gladiators for the emperor's entertainment, you'll have no problem when they're mistreated and considered animals.
Responsibility. Why do you use words like vermin and poisoning of the blood? The press, as you know, immediately reacts to that by saying, well, that's the kind of language that Hitler and Mussolini used.
Well, that's what they say. I didn't know that, but that's what they say. Because our country is being poisoned. Look, we have, and we can be nice about it. We can talk about, I want to be politically correct, but...
So Trump echoes Hitler and simply blows it off as being politically incorrect, because he's looking to normalize the very same rhetoric that convinced enough people that they should endorse genocidal ideas. So we're no longer talking about solving any immigration problem that we have, or the reasons for the large numbers of people making life-threatening journeys to get here. We just have people hell-bent on using tragedies to progress their punitive agenda, whether it's true or not.
The illegals are behind bars for a second. They come out, they flip off the cameras after they beat up cops.
So this is from March 2nd. Man charged with attacking cops in Times Square and vilified in Trump ad was misidentified, DA says. A Venezuelan man who became the subject of national attention for allegedly kicking a police officer in Times Square, then flipping off news cameras on his way out of court, was cleared of any wrongdoing on Friday after prosecutors concluded he played no role in the attack. It was initially believed that a person seen on the video on the January 27th brawl wearing a black and white jacket with pink shoes was Johan Boada, according to police. However, the Manhattan DA's office has said that the person was actually 25-year-old Marseille Este, who has since been arrested and charged with assault on a police officer. The stunning exoneration came weeks after Boada went viral as the smug face of the brawl between migrants and police officers that touched off widespread political fervor. He featured prominently in a pro-Trump political ad titled Joe Biden's Middle Finger, which ended on a freeze frame of Boada making the gesture while leaving his initial arraignment.
This happens all the time. When the basis for a policy that targets what the people in power consider one kind of person based on race, ethnicity, gender, religion, or country of origin That ignorance leads to discriminatory policies that criminalize anyone that they consider bad and produces more misinformed supporters. But then again, they don't mind uninformed voters. That's who they're targeting for votes that have nothing to do with the problem.
And all of a sudden, all this money shows up for illegal immigrants. And by the way, the illegals magically always appear in their shelters, magically always appear in black neighborhoods. The black community in Chicago is going, what the heck is going on? We didn't know there was all this money. I mean, we're raising, as Corey is, from private money, or they're being told there's no money for youth centers to keep kids off the street, or whatever the program is, even the homeless. But there's room and shelter space for illegals. So clearly it's frustrating, but it's more than that. It's revealing. I think a lot of African Americans are waking up to the fact that the Democrats maybe really didn't care about them, that they were just another voting bloc. And when this other voting bloc, which, you know, when Joe Biden opened the border, they're coming through, they're having a lot more kids. They're a more reliable base, perhaps, for the Democrat Party. And now the black community is waking up and saying, hey, I think we're being replaced, we're being deprioritized for this new group that seems to be electorally a priority for the Democrat Party.
It's weird how conservatives like to take a break every 8 years or so to address black Americans as anything other than criminals, only to try to tell them that Democrats are looking to replace them with foreign-born people seeking a better life. But when black folks shout about our many standard policies, from discrimination in housing and jobs to profiling and over-policing, these same people don't give a damn. They think they can create a boogeyman to scare us into supporting politicians that have no desire to represent anyone that isn't in their circle. So while all the people they dismiss are fighting, they can destroy our economy and blame the usual suspects.
A number of Nobel Prize-winning economists coming out today talking about the difference between a Biden election mark versus re-election versus Trump winning. And this is something else that Steve Eisman basically shrugged off and said, doesn't really think it matters. But they were talking about the fact that Trump would be a lot more inflationary. Is that how you view Trump 2.0?
Yes, I do. I mean, just think about the policies he's putting forward. And here, of course, I'm assuming that he gets roughly what he wants. But if he does, then it's going to add to inflation. I mean, the tariffs by themselves are going to be quite significant, 10% across the board. He's talked about 60% on Chinese imports into this country. His immigration policy, particularly deportations, I mean, that, you know, if he actually could follow through on that, that would be highly disruptive to leisure hospitality, retailing, the mining industry, agriculture. You know, food prices would go back up.
So while Trump looks to deliver on satisfying his promise to conduct mass deportations, to claim that he's cleansing the country of the scary people that he's conditioned folks to believe are destroying the economy, he won't admit that those policies have negative effects on the economy.
Think about the tax cuts. They're deficit financed. There's no plan for paying for the tax cuts, and he's talking about more tax cuts. You know, lowering the corporate tax rate even more, which will add to deficits, and that's a stimulus, fiscal stimulus, adding to the economy's growth when it's already at full employment. And of course, this is now more speculative, but there's been, very credible kind of media reports about thoughts about impacting the relationship between the executive branch, the president, President Trump, and the Federal Reserve Board and Fed independence. And of course, a bedrock of a well-functioning market economy is an independent central bank. And if that's eroded in any way, that's going to result in more inflation. I can go on, but you add that all up, that's a brew for higher rates of inflation.
Ironically, being an authoritarian that hopes to control aspects of the economy in any way he sees fit, including providing even more handouts to his lazy elitist supporters, would exacerbate the problems that he keeps complaining about. So the best way to keep reality from reaching his supporters' minds is to make sure that there's a healthy problem at the border to keep the boogeyman narrative alive.
On immigration, Sarah, I think it's the same thing. President Biden can talk about how Republicans have only wanted to weaponize this issue when they were faced with an opportunity to actually fix a huge part of this in terms of border security. They turned their back on their own bill. That says to the American people that this is a candidate and a party that has no interest whatsoever in actually solving the issue